And welcome to TraderTalk TV. Today we've got James from Kevel in the office. James, how you doing?
Great, glad to be here.
Great to have you in the office. And today we're talking about the unbundling of retail media technology and the future of commerce media and retail media. And James has come into the office today to talk a bit about that. But before we do that, James, can you just introduce yourself and a bit about the company as well, please?
Yeah, absolutely. My name is James Avery. I'm the founder and CEO of Kevel. And we are a company that provides the technology for marketplaces, retailers, fintech to build really next generation ad platforms.
And Kevel have actually probably stumbled into one of the biggest opportunities in ad tech because great technology companies always do. They're kind of underpinning a lot of sort of the sell side in retail media and commerce media. But I want to talk a bit about that before we jump into sort of the future, because we had a great conversation initially for this video about what's the future of the retail media space. But Kevel, interesting company. I want to talk about where you sit in the stack and how you work with commerce media and retail media companies.
Yeah, absolutely. So I mean, really, we, like you said earlier, we're on the supply side. So our focus is on retailers, marketplaces, people like food delivery apps, people like Klarna, Delivery Hero. They use our platform to build out their ad platform. Yeah. Because we all know like the opportunity retail media is, but then how do you get there? Yeah. And we basically enable them to go a lot faster. Okay,
can we sketch out what the ecosystem looks like at the minute? Because there's a lot of hype around retail media, and at Cannes there was so many panels, so many discussions about what is the future. But I think this the nuance of this needs to be kind of described a little more and where it could go, because we're kind of at the very early stages of this process.
Yeah, absolutely. So should we, I guess like everything else, right? It's like demand and supply. Yeah. Right. And so over here we have, people like Klarna, Tesco, whoever we want to pick, right? Yeah. And I think what we see today is that there's a lot of apps or a lot of companies, right, that are like this. Like in the old days, where they're providing theirs, on the supply side, like fundamentally you need an ad server, right? You need something to really decide when and where an ad should be shown, how it should be priced, what keywords you should target, what SKUs you should target, all of that, right? And then over here somewhere you have, not technically an ad server, but you have some sort of demand source, right? Yeah. Like, and it's hard to actually write what it is, because today it's kind of, it's like direct sales.
Exactly,
it's like,
there's a lot going on.
So we'll say like direct IOs, and then you also have self-serve. Right, so companies build out, self-serve so that you can go into Tesco and say, I want to, promote these items, or I want to buy this ad unit. Yeah. Through like a self-serve interface. Yeah. Then I'd say like over here too, you have like the pack views and people like that are kind of aggregating self-serve.
Yeah, as they kind of like build into the Amazon, you can see how your ads are performing and all the rest of it. So you guys sit squarely in this sort of bracket here, and you kind of sort of build the framework. I mean, you work with Klarna, so talk about your relationship with them. How do you build their tech, and how do they use it? Yeah, so I mean, like we're an API-based company, so we're like similar to something like Twilio or even like Amazon Web Services, where they're building on top of our APIs. Yeah. So we're not going in and like doing it for them. Right. But we partner, or they use our tech to build out that ad serving capability. And then in their case, like they built their own self-serve on top of our APIs. And that sort of satisfy a lot of the endemic demand that they have for their site. So I mean, they build out sort of ads on page, product listings, all the rest of it. So you can enable them to sell that into their own clients.
Yep. Yeah. And then they do direct IOs as well, right? Like for large brands that they have a partnership with. And so like the demand always looks. I mean, the other one I'd add here, right, is like ad networks.
What, run by the likes of Tesco's and Sainsbury's, sort of,
or no, really like the third-party ones, right? So it's like you can have, like if we look at somebody like a Criteo or a Citrus, right? Like they have people doing direct IO, they're providing the self-serve, and then they have like their ad network where they're going to a brand and saying, buy across all of the retailers that use us.
Yeah. Right? So this is sort of early innings, right? I just feel that this is sort of like, there's a lot of hype around retail media, a lot of column inches written about it, a lot of panels discussing it. And it just feels that it's a messy space right now, right?
Well, and it feels like it's really consolidated, right? Like as early, like remember like mobile, when mobile was new, it was like, oh, there's like one thing in mobile, right? It was like, you know, they were the company that was selling the ads and you know, running the ad network, and they had the ad server, and it was all bundled together.
Yeah.
And then over time, we just always see it start to pull apart.
Okay, okay, this is good, because I think this is where we want to be talking right now. So initially, we're talking about the early stages of this sort of new category. You have sort of consolidated across demand and sell side, and there is almost everything like direct IO, self-service, ad networks. It's a bit messy on the demand side because people are still figuring out what is this. But we were talking about this before we were on camera, that there's going to be a really, really interesting opportunity. From my perspective, I do think that a lot of the retail media and commerce media are rightly obsessed about UX, because their goal is to sell stuff on site.
Yeah.
It's not necessarily to sell ads to sort of like pay for content. It's actually, we need to sell more Frosties, or we need to sell more milk, or we need to sell more sausages, or whatever it might be. So it feels to me that that's the wrong, ad tech's taking the wrong direction, going, it's all about ads. It really isn't, is it? There's a real big opportunity around product listings, right? Which seems to be like the natural progression for where these things going. So I want to talk to you a bit about this, because you were talking about beforehand that you do see a sort of demand and supply piece and a demarcation between coming.
Yeah.
And I want to talk about that, and I also want to talk about where that product listings thing might become really interesting.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think like what you were saying earlier, we call that like, it's like first do no harm.
Yeah.
Right? Like it's like the code of retail media and marketplaces. Like the first thing is you can't hurt
Don't annoy the customer.
You can't hurt your conversion rates. You can't hurt the core business. Like that's the golden goose.
Yeah.
And so ad tech and advertising is just a, you know, accelerant on top of that.
Yeah.
But you can't like, you know, like a traditional publisher might, you know, make more compromises.
Yeah, we
with,
put
like,
some
the number of ads
or
and what they're willing to put on
exactly.
there. But like retailers and marketplaces like,
have to be
can't
super careful.
Yeah. But yeah, and so then, so we talked about, you know, like in traditional ad tech, right? Like these always start to shift because the companies on this side want somebody who has their best interest at heart and is building for the supply. Mm-hmm. And the demand, you know, they have different needs and requirements.
Yeah.
Right? And like, what does Procter & Gamble want?
Exactly.
From a demand side.
Yeah.
And, you know, what does, you know, Tesco want from a supply side, right? And those things start to differ. And that's why I think you see the tech start to slide on both sides.
Yeah.
And when we talk about this too, like I didn't fill in other stuff here, but with retail media, there's also, you know, lots of really tricky stuff like attribution and like catalog management, right? And those are things today that where attribution can be pretty contentious, right? Of like who, you know, what does Procter & Gamble consider
Is it
incremental?
a sale?
What do they consider incremental?
Yeah.
What does the supply consider incremental?
Yeah.
And, you know, how does that kind of arbitrate it?
Yeah. So can we talk a little bit about the product listings piece? Because that's where I suppose the likes of Citrus Ad and Criteo have got some sort of traction with, particularly Criteo with the Hook Logic acquisition. That's kind of where they got their in. But I feel that there is a big opportunity around that, because having spoken to a few DSPs, which I won't name on camera, that there's going to be a big play around taking like all those SKUs and being able to sort of galvanize demand around, and not necessarily around the top CPG brands. There's huge opportunity in the mid to long tail, particularly around DTC. I want to talk about where you think this is going to go, because I just have my own opinion about it, but I'd love to hear from someone who's actually in the trenches.
Yeah. So if you think about like a big grocery chain, right? Like they don't need somebody else to sell to Procter & Gamble for them. No. Right? Like they have a direct relationship with Procter & Gamble. They can go and sell display and promoted listings and everything. Yeah,
right? Trade budget space.
But then the next question is like that middle stack of you're a, you know, middle-sized brand that maybe is in the store, but you're not a huge buyer, you don't have a ton of shelf space. You know, how are you gonna buy? Right? And like you're gonna want to buy through like some sort of DSP.
Yes.
Right? Like that's what we've learned.
Exactly.
Like you know, Trade Desk and people like that have built amazing tech for advertisers. Like they don't want to give that up and go to, you know,
I'm just basically reinvent the wheel.
Exactly. Right. And so like, so we think that there's, when you look at the supply side and you think about what's going on here, right? Like on a retailer's site, you know, I come in and I'm searching, or I'm picking a category, right? You have just like the endemic products that show up.
Yeah.
And the challenge with a lot of these people that are trying to turn it into an ad network is that they're trying to put like a fake ad in here, right? Like an ad that looks like a product.
Right.
And maybe it clicks and maybe it goes to the same site, but a lot of times there's mismatches on what exactly you want. And these companies have invested millions and millions of dollars in like their relevancy.
Right.
And so like they've spent a ton of money on like these should be the right items that show up.
Because it increases the sales and
like, and that's the do no harm, right? Like if you start putting in a non-relevant ad here.
When you say non-relevant, you think non-endemic ad like a bloody insurance ad or a car ad.
Yeah,
or
even like a product, like if you come in here and you search for crisps, and then you get something that's like close. Yeah. Right. You get Coca-Cola. Like, does that? Maybe the margin on the crisps is way better for the store, and that's why they wanted that first. Yeah. Right? And so they're happy if the crisp company wants to promote it. Yeah. But they don't want Coca-Cola there. Okay. Right? Like, who decides that? Like, the supply side should decide that. Right. Like, that's their site. And so, like, what I believe is going to happen is that, you know, these do all have SKUs, right? And there are SKUs across all these different retailers. They're different, but they all align back to things that the brand knows. Right. Right? And so the way we work today is that when you search here, you know, and then this organic list, we actually send that list of SKUs to our engine to decide what should serve. Right. So like if Procter & Gamble wants to promote an item here, they're promoting something that's already endemically showing up. Right. But it's not that big of a leap to say like normally, you know, this is going to us, Kevel, but then, you know, we could pass that to a DSP. Yes. Right? And we can tell that DSP, hey, look, these are all the SKUs that are available in this search result. Here's who that person is or what we know about them, right? Like, do they normally buy this? Do they not normally buy it? What other data do you have? What data does the brand have, right? Like, it'd say, oh, this person used to always buy Pampers, but then they started buying Huggies. Yeah. And I'm going to pay a lot to put Pampers right here because I want that buyer back. Yeah. Right? And so, like, the DSP wants to have all that control. And so we really think there's this big opportunity to, you know, both separate it, but then also create like a real connection. Yeah, like a proper programmatic supply chain. Yeah. And this would be like stuff that CPGs and D2C brands would want to buy because you're basically supplying information here that they can bid on, and this will all become biddable impressions basically. Yeah. And then the other key part here too, right, is because we have a tight integration. We can get full order logs, right? And so if you know the full order log and you can handle returns and things like that, then we can actually also ship like true attribution data. So you could actually show the sales on those specific ads to the full attribution model. Yeah, so then the DSP can start to bid, they can build their models on ROAS and how do they want to bid to get that attribution, right? Like that's where we're going. We're not there yet, but like that's the future. This is the most interesting conversation I've had about this so far because I think that we've had this kind of like, you know, we'll just do programmatic 2.0, right? But the reality is, as we've just pointed out, the UX is so important and the user experience is so important to the retailers and commerce media. Like, you know, Uber's not going to start doing this nonsense. Like, they're going to serve ads, but they're going to do it in a way that suits the Uber sort of experience. And other sort of people like Ciarán are not going to start serving ads for the sake of serving ads and just basically increase yield because it's just going to piss off so many of their customers. Yeah. So the fact that you can take one of the most important pieces, like as you said, spent millions of pounds on these product listings around search, because search is still a huge issue, and then being able to kind of take that information and pass it to a trade desk or a DV360 or a MediaMath and allow the buyers to bid on that, but then being able to take the full attribution model makes it super interesting. That makes it like you know. Yeah, and it ties back, like when we talk about retail a lot, it's easy to talk about like e-commerce, but also any of the, like we work with Delivery Hero, right? It's the same thing. If McDonald's wants to be able to buy promotions across 100 different delivery apps or 10 different delivery apps, right? Like stuff like that can all be pushed through the DSP, which is where we know brands want to buy, right? Whether it could be programmatic guaranteed, it could be, you know, PMP deals, it could be open exchange, right? Like all the stuff that we built already can be. How do we just leverage if this connection's built? Yeah. Do you think that there's that just thinking beyond that there's going to be an interesting sort of play around trade budgets, right? So think about it this way: if you have existing relation between CPGs and Tesco, but you alluded to the point that there might be some smaller brands that could start pushing money out into other areas. Like so, Kevel, for instance, could be like one of the biggest sort of commerce media SSPs, right? There's no reason why they couldn't say ad serve SSP full stack on the sell side.
you could actually aggregate quite a lot of like second and third tier and start being able to give brands the opportunity to sell across all those things to those audiences that could be way more interesting, which means that trade budgets start shifting around a little bit.
Yeah.
Do you think that's a situation that could happen?
Yeah, well, and I think there's like the trade budget stuff. I've learned way more about it than I ever wanted.
I mean,
to know.
I'm
like,
yeah.
Like sometimes it is like a guaranteed thing, right?
Yeah.
Where it's like, oh, for this shelf space, we agree to spend this
Exactly.
much. And like that's another thing where let's say whatever company, Procter & Gamble is agreeing to spend $100 million with Sainsbury's as part of this trade spend. If it now goes through one of these big stacks, they're paying 20%.
Yes.
To whoever.
Yeah.
Right? Whereas if you start to go through this stack, maybe they're paying a DSP fee.
Yeah.
But there's not somebody in between.
Yes.
And they could even, like with a DSP, you could even settle the commercials outside of it.
Yeah.
Right? Like you could agree to do that payment directly. And so like this gives a lot more flexibility as that trade budget goes online.
Yeah.
Because if they take 100 million and then it goes online and they get 70% of it, like that's pretty terrible outcome for the supplier. And then I think, but when you talk about like the long, like the medium tail, right? I think especially on the supply side, the big brands don't want to go to 50 different self-serves.
No.
But
I mean,
but I don't think an ad network is the right
it's
answer.
impossible. It's impossible. And like, as you say, we've had a situation where multiple ad networks have worked, and then the DSPs have kind of replaced that because they want an aggregated buy, right?
Yep.
There's a reason why the Trade Desk is a $36 billion business, because they've aggregated a lot of that thing. And I just, speaking to Jeff Green about this, he's as enthusiastic about you that this is going to happen in the next sort of 5 years.
No, he said it, I remember, on an earnings call.
Yeah.
He's like, he thinks the majority of promoted listings will get bought through Trade Desk.
Which is exciting because I think that, you could Kevel could end up working with like 100 marketplaces globally and being able to give them this sort of ability to tap into spend that they could never do with sort of IO and managed service.
Yeah, no, and we work with 100 today.
There you go.
1,000's the next step.
1,000's the next stop. So how close are we to this, you reckon? Like, because you were talking about, is there an IB Tech Lab thing, or is this something you're thinking about, or?
Yeah, I mean, I think we'd love to start it with IB Tech Lab.
Yeah.
We've been kind of putting our thoughts around like how this works. We've been talking to some of the DSPs.
Yeah.
But the next step is a working group. Right?
Yeah.
To say like, let's either we'll do it with the Tech Lab or on our own.
Very exciting.
And hopefully the Tech Lab, because I think there's a lot of potential here.
Do you think that there's an opportunity as well? Because obviously not every marketplace, I'm just kind of pointing out some obvious sort of glaring flaws. Every marketplace would not necessarily have a D2C brand sort of in their own fulfillment order or their own sort of warehouse. So is there a way for them to still buy here and able to sort of sell on the site? Like we were talking about before, is there another stage where you can click and still be on the market site, so the marketplace can still make money?
Yeah. I mean, I think we were talking about, I don't remember the name of the company, but there's a couple of them out there that are helping to start facilitating the idea that you have an ad that's a third-party DTC brand, but it's still fulfilled through the same cart, and then basically drop ship. Right, and so that creates another entry or another interesting way to do that. And then the trick there is really controlling that relevancy.
Yes.
And that's where we have a lot of relevancy logic that we can pull in from the supplier, so they can tell us the relevancy of things, and we'd have to figure out what's the relevancy of that DTC item.
And I guess that's the beauty of working with you guys, is that you're able to feed that information, and the retailer, the commerce media entity has complete control of what appears here. So they've got which then makes it easier for buyers, because if you're able to feed that through to DSP, it means they're not wasting money just buying across things that they shouldn't even be buying across.
Yeah, I mean, like today we get thousands of updates a second to our customers' catalogs.
Yeah.
Like for things like stock.
Yeah.
Because like how often in a system where they're not as tightly connected, like one of these larger ad networks, you might be promoting an item that's out of stock.
Yeah.
Right? And that's the last thing that a brand wants to do.
So basically you're able to feed that as well through the...
Yeah, well, we wouldn't even send it, right? Like we would basically, we would only send the SKUs that are in stock, that are relevant to that user, and then we can even include. We can once we get the bid back, we can adjust the bid based on the relevancy. Kind of like the quality score that Google has. Do the same thing to say, oh, if you're all the way down here, and you want to move up here, that costs a lot more than moving here to here. Yeah.
And that's why this is a bigger opportunity than CTV. It's an amazing opportunity here. Huge, and I'm delighted to have had Kevel in the office today, the most important company in retail media.
I agree.
So James, thanks for your time today.
Yeah, absolutely. Thank you for having me.
And we'll no doubt go back into this over the next couple of months. There's some fascinating stuff going on. Thank you.
Yeah, thank you.
And that was TraderTalk TV, and we will see you next time.